The creature carried a cell phone. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I was driving last night with my girlfriend Debbie, and we nearly ran into a very tall, hairy, naked man with a dog head that was crossing the highway in front of us. It was not a Bigfoot. It had a long canine snout and tall, pointed canine ears on top of its head. The coloring was dark. I don't really remember what shade. It might have been brown or black or gray, but it was quite dark, and the fur seemed to cover him all over, including the lower abdomen. I couldn't tell for certain that it was a male due to its privates being covered in so much fur, but it felt like a male to me and Debbie both. There's a much stranger part to this story, but it might sound silly if I don't lead up to it correctly. Deb and I are both sitting here together, and we will try to remember every possible detail and put them in the exact order they happened. We are genuinely curious what people will think, so please feel free to comment on this video. I might contact some of the commenters privately, but we don't want to publicly state our names, as we aren't sure that would be kosher with our families and our jobs, not to mention our future jobs. This sighting just happened last night, and we may eventually decide to come forward with our identities, but we would like to see how people react to this anonymous version first. We also haven't told either her parents or mine, which is another hurdle we have to leap soon. So, back to the beginning. We were driving back to our hometown, which is a northern suburb of Philadelphia. We had been at a concert by Thomas Rhett. Debbie thinks his music is romantic, so I bought her the tickets for her birthday, back in April. He's not my favorite, but I do like when he sings about booze. So it was dark out, and we were driving eastward on Benjamin Franklin Highway. Or actually by that point we might have been mainly heading south to get back to King of Prussia. So there's not exactly a lot of wilderness on that route home, and usually the highway has a decent amount of traffic on it. You don't feel that you're out in the wilderness, and you don't expect to have a cryptid sighting of any kind, let alone one as bizarro planet as the one that happened to us. We were passing one of the few parts of the drive where there are trees on both sides of the road at once, and I saw a big man step over the guardrail to our right, further up ahead of us on the road. We were about to hit him, so I slammed on the brakes, but the gentleman seemed to be lost in his cell phone. As he lifted one leg over the guardrail, I thought that leg was broken horrifically, but when he stepped down and then put all his weight on that leg, I realized it was not a broken human leg. It was a perfectly healthy canine leg. This was a bipedal, upright walking creature, and yet it had legs like a dog or a cat. Looking back up at his face, illuminated in blue light by the cell phone held close in front of his long snout, I saw that this was in fact an upright walking canine, or else some kind of a mix between a dog or wolf and a human being. Possibly it might have been a werewolf, if those are real. It did have thumbs, and I don't think wolves have those. So it wasn't only that a wolf learned to walk, it was some other kind of a creature, one that could walk upright and manipulate objects with paws that seemed an awful lot like hands. I had seen the creature enough in advance that I was able to stop the car about 10 or 15 feet ahead of the beast. It walked past us, in front, never acknowledging our presence. It was like a 3D projection, and it was like a residual haunting in the way that it didn't seem to have any awareness of us. But it was clearly a real physical animal, taking up three-dimensional space, because the light from my headlights played off its body as it walked by, in the same way it would have played off anything else that was real and solid. It was not transparent, it was just inexplicable. We both sat there in the car, the engine, idling, as the creature crossed the road and stepped over the guardrail on the other side, walking down the incline and disappearing from our view rapidly. We had not seen any traffic the entire time this was happening. Yet once that creature disappeared from view, A loud beeping came from behind us, and I had to put the car in drive and get going fast before some lunatic smashed into us from behind. Now, the trees that creature walked through to get onto the road in front of us lead to a country club and a golf course on the other side. So was that dog-headed man having a drink with his society buddies? Did he pop in for a few rounds of golf? At any rate, when he entered into the woods on the other side, those woods are actually part of a small wooded area surrounding the Skykill River over there. It doesn't seem like a large enough wild area to support a predator, especially one the size of that big old Dogman that we saw. But there you go. Debbie would like to add that she felt that Dogman had hurt somebody in the country club or golf course, and had taken their cell phone from them, maybe just because it was a bright, colorful, shiny object. We actually debated calling the police about it, but we couldn't come up with a way to talk to them about it that didn't sound insane. Hello, police? We saw a really tall, dog-headed naked man cross the highway staring at his cell phone. So, could you please investigate the country club to see if there's been a murder? I mean, even I would have hung up on that call, and I would have been the one making it. So, we went to Deb's place and searched online for Dogman carrying a cell phone, and we didn't find anything. But we did find mention of an old story that happened in Pennsylvania, same as ours did. It wasn't a Dogman, though. It was a Bigfoot. And he wasn't staring at a cell phone. He was carrying a small globe that glowed like a cell phone. He was staring at it as he walked along, and this was reported by a group of teenage girls. After finding that story online, we both began to wonder if the Dogman was carrying something that was, in fact, not a cell phone at all. What if he was carrying some technology that resembled a cell phone? What if we witnessed an intelligent creature from another reality, strolling past us, looking at some device that makes sense in his world? What if we got a closer look at what he was holding, and we were as surprised by that technology as we had been by the Dogman? I mean, as weird an idea as a Dogman staring at a cell phone is, the reality of the situation might have turned out to be even weirder still. So obviously Deb and I are still bouncing off the walls about this since it happened so recently. We'd love to find out that one of you understands our sighting better than we do, because to us, that was like some nightmare fever dream happening out there in the real world. We don't know what that was, and we don't know why we were the ones who saw it. Debbie and I are still freaked out about this whole thing, and you would be too. After all, it sure looked to us as though the creature carried a cell phone. The big white Batsquatch of Little Traverse Township, Michigan. Dear Scary Stories NYC, we have a monster here in Little Traverse, Michigan that we have started calling the Batsquatch. The problem is that name is already taken by a completely different cryptid that gets sighted out on the west coast. That Batsquatch is a large, dark, flying animal with bat-like wings. Ours is nothing like that. First, let me tell you what it looks like, and then I'll tell you what my friends who saw it told me. This creature looks like a polar bear from a distance, but the face is nothing like a polar bear. It has no wings, and it is a land animal. But there's a very specific reason why it got the name Batsquatch. This thing has a face that looks like a giant bat face. It has a hideous, tall, pointed nose. It has tiny, beady little eyes. And it has giant, bat-like ears. My guess is that it can smell and hear like nobody's business. But it probably doesn't see all that well. At least not by human standards. Even if our kind of Batsquatch had wings, I don't think it could lift its massive weight off the ground. Pretty sure that would require jet engines, as this thing is nearly as wide as it is tall. So my buddy Paul saw the thing leap out onto the road in front of him. On Pleasant View Road, over sorta by Pintail Lodge. There's that clear cut over there for the telephone lines. And sometimes you see animals wandering that long, winding pathway through there. On that night, Paul saw a big white animal run out in front of his car on its hind legs. His father was in the passenger seat, and Paul said his dad started screaming that it was a streaker. They got close enough to that ugly thing to see those big ears and that hideous bat nose, and they both agreed that whatever that streaker was, it was not a human being. After the creature crossed the road, it went up one of those pathways over there. I'm not really sure what they lead to. Again, the creature was huge, like a polar bear. Paul said it was 12 feet, and his dad said 10. So in either case, this was a truly massive Batsquatch, as tall as it was ugly. We aren't really good friends with this next person, but there's a guy in my sister's class who claims he saw the big polar Batsquatch at one of the ski lodges up to the north of us. There are a few over there, and I'm not going to say which one of them it was. Somehow, this dude skied off course and slammed into a tree, which knocked him out. When he woke up, he claimed that a huge polar bear with a bat nose and giant ears was leaning over him, smelling his face. When it heard some people approaching to rescue the dude, then supposedly the Batsquatch monster ran away. If this had been an isolated incident, then I'd say this individual was hallucinating after skiing into that tree. But when coupled with the other reported sightings in the region, I think this is more evidence to add to the pile. Now, we've got a road near here called Bigfoot Road, and on it, there's a patch of grass, which for some reason I don't remember is called Bigfoot Parking. I think there used to be a reason to have a parking lot there, but as far as I know now, it's only sometimes used by teenagers to park and neck in the dark. Of course, I would know nothing about that from personal experience, but I heard a story about my friend Ben's older brother's friend, who was dating this new girl in school, and they went parking on Bigfoot Road one night. When they first saw the monster moving around in the dark, acting all scary, they assumed it was someone dressed as an albino Bigfoot, adding some atmosphere to the abandoned and overgrown Bigfoot parking lot. They supposedly laughed it off at first. Neither of them believed it was for real, when whatever it was began tossing small rocks at the car from the darkness, putting dings in the paint job. Ben's older brother's friend burst out of the car all angry and started yelling at whoever was hiding in the darkness to come out and show themselves. Unfortunately for him, the Batsquatch did as he had been asked, shambling out of the woods and into the light, looking bigger than a bodybuilder or a football defensive back. Ben's older brother's friend jumped back in the car and locked it up, and that Batsquatch started pushing down on the front end, over and over. He was so strong, it was like he was going to break the car. So this guy started his engine and noped off into the sunset, as they say. Again, it was a polar bear with a bat's ugly face. It was the same kind of thing all over. That wasn't the only story I've heard so far from Bigfoot Road involving the Batsquatch. Supposedly, if you drive down that road at 3 a.m., you can see the Batsquatches, a whole lot of them, staring out at you as you drive by. Or at least you can see their eyes shine, emanating from the pitch darkness. You need to keep driving until you get out of there. Nobody knows what happens to those who stop the car on Bigfoot Road at 3 a.m. because nobody who has ever tried it has come forward to tell us what happened. There's one more spot that people say the Batsquatch of Michigan haunts, and that's about a 10 or 15 minute drive away from the Bigfoot parking lot. I'm talking about the Friendship Township Cemetery up on Stutzmanville Road. People say that if you drive past there in the middle of the night, you can see the Batsquatch lurking in the trees set back from the road. They say it's easier to see if you look with your side vision, because then the Batsquatch doesn't know you're trying to see him, and he's more likely to walk out from the trees that way. There's a kid in my school, this really intense guy, who claims all the stories about Batsquatch in the cemetery go back to a genuine sighting that his uncle had there back just before the pandemic. This kid says his uncle was driving past the cemetery in the middle of the night and thought he saw some people doing something that they shouldn't have been doing. I'm not sure what the guy meant by that, so I guess use your imagination. This guy's uncle must have thought he was Batman or something, because he pulled his car over and parked next to the cemetery. Then he jumped out and raced toward the back of the graveyard where he thought he had seen the people. Well, there were no people waiting to greet him back there, but he claimed he did see two huge, hairy, pig-nosed monsters with bodies the size of brown bears or larger. Each of them had a thick coat of light-colored fur that reminded him of a polar bear more than anything else. Both creatures were in the process of eating some large animal as big as they were. It was already devoured enough as to have become unrecognizable. Both Batsquatches growled and adopted hostile postures, clearly not wanting to share their catch with the human intruder. So my intense classmate's uncle supposedly just sort of moonwalked backward out of there and lived to tell the tale. He claimed that one of the creatures followed him out to the edge of the tree line and stood there watching until he got into his car and drove out of that scene. That's the only story I've heard so far which featured two creatures, so I'm assuming they must have been family. After all, they were sharing the same food, and even most animal clans will battle over their food more than these two seem to be doing. I guess I had been kinda hoping that there was only one of these beasts in our area, because that might mean that it was a freak of nature, or a lone wolf out wandering in a place that its species does not live. If this sighting of a couple of them is accurate, then who knows how many of the beasts might already be in the region? Who knows how quickly they might be breeding and multiplying? How soon will it be before they expand throughout the Great Lakes region? Or has this happened already? After all, the creatures must have come from somewhere. If we can locate older sightings of them, we might be able to figure out where they came from, and by logical extension, we might be figuring out where they're going next. So I do think this is a new kind of cryptid, and I think it needs more attention drawn to it. Since Batsquatch is already taken as a name, what do you think this cryptid should be called? A lot of the time a cryptid doesn't truly get recognition until it has the correct name applied to it. A name that the public can remember, and that the media can latch onto. If you have any ideas about that, or if you know of any other local stories about the monster, please send them along. Also, if you know of other places where the creature has been seen outside of our little part of Michigan, please pass that info along as well. After all, maybe it already has a cool name, and we just haven't heard about it yet, here in Little Traverse. Until such time as you enlighten us with better info, we're going to go on, at least temporarily, referring to this creature as the Batsquatch of Little Traverse Township, Michigan. Chris C. in the place to be, today's EP indubitably. Please join us in thanking Chris C. for making this episode possible. You know, we're only barely staying online these days thanks to the kind help that we receive from the true giants of this generation. Important philanthropists like Chris C. join the ranks of the great, who help us continue bringing you new stories almost every day of the month and get cool perks in return. Here comes international TV spokesmongrel Henrey Lee Dogman to fill in the deets. Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos, or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.